August is usually a very quiet month in the Eurovision year. This year, though, it is anything but. As a result of rule changes announced just last week, Israel has effectively been indefinitely banned from hosting the Eurovision Song Contest. As well as that, its entire mechanism for manipulating the vote, as it has done in the last few years, has been cut off at the knees. In addition to that, we also have a host city announced and a bunch of other rule changes. Oh, and also the main sponsor of the event has now pulled out. So yeah, it's been a quiet one. I will do a full video on the host city for next year, Burgas, and why I think it might have won over Sofia, but that deserves its own space to breathe, so I'm not going to cover it in this video, and instead I'm going to focus on those aforementioned rule changes. We're going to talk about why they're so significant, and why they specifically undermine a lot of the ways in which Israel has exploited the contest. Eurovision's sponsor may be gone, but today's sponsor, Surfshark VPN, is here to stay. I travelled a lot during Eurovision season, and it was such a lifesaver to be able to continue to watch the same series on Netflix or elsewhere as I do at home. As well as that, I can access series that are available elsewhere but not in the UK. Every time we went abroad, I'd just enable Surfshark when we arrived and then just leave it running the entire time. It was seamless and everything worked like back home. With Surfshark, you can switch between 4,500 servers in 140 different countries, so you've always got a fast and responsive connection. And they're high speed, so you won't have to deal with buffering either. Eurovision finally came to YouTube in the US this year. But if you're having trouble with past years or it's still blocked in your jurisdiction, then you can use Surfshark to bypass that or watch any region-locked national finals on the relevant broadcaster. Surfshark also has various features to keep you safe and anonymous online, such as alternative ID, which generates a fake name, address, and masked email forwarding to protect your privacy, and Email Scam Checker, which can detect phishing patterns in emails. If somehow your details are compromised, there's also Surfshark Alert, which is a 24/7 leak monitoring tool that lets you know if your information gets out and helps you take action. I can't recommend Surfshark enough, and with a 30-day money-back guarantee, there is no risk to you. Go to surfshark.com/ESCGabe or use code ESCGabe at checkout for 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. Now let's get back to these rule changes. We're going to start with the big one, which, as I said, was effectively banning Israel indefinitely from hosting the contest. This is how the EBU described it in their press release last week. The rules of the contest now say the winning broadcaster will automatically be ineligible to host the contest if an armed conflict, a sensitive geopolitical situation, or any other situation materially affects the security, safety, or stability of their state or immediate region. Where deemed necessary, the EBU may commission an independent security assessment of the winner's region. Following that assessment, the EBU will consult the reference group to determine whether the winning member is able to safely host the contest. If the winning member is deemed unable to host, the EBU will identify an alternative host broadcaster. The appointed host broadcaster will assume all rights, obligations, and liabilities associated with hosting the contest, including responsibility for the organization, production, and staging of the event. The host broadcaster will organize the contest in its own right and will not be required to stage the event on behalf of another member. Digging into the actual rule set, which is published on Eurovision's website, 2 even more explosive reasons are listed for grounds to be removed as the host. The privilege of hosting can be removed if a country is found to have attempted to unfairly influence the results or outcome of the Eurovision Song Contest in favor of its own entry, or does not respect, protect, or otherwise undermines the non-political character of the Eurovision Song Contest. Given that it's already established by precedent in 2023 that Ukraine can't host Eurovision while the war with Russia is ongoing, this regulation essentially stands to say one thing: Israel cannot host in the current circumstances. And any other country that found itself in similar circumstances in future would be in the same position. What's striking to me is the breadth of different reasons that the EBU now has at its disposal to deem someone ineligible to host. A sensitive geopolitical situation can mean almost anything and can be read essentially as a clause that says, we needed a way to wriggle out of the disaster scenario after a few too many close calls. That's before we get to the fact that the rules now provide for the removal of hosting duties for voting manipulation or politicization of the contest. This is the equivalent of, after 3 years of running without a net, the EBU taking out an insurance policy. There are other impacts here too. In 2023, when Ukraine was unable to host, the Ukrainian broadcaster was still considered a host broadcaster and Ukraine still automatically qualified for the the grand final. They were simply considered as doing so alongside the BBC. These rules potentially preclude that situation from being repeated. This is made clear in the EBU's press briefing, which reads, "The host broadcaster will organise the contest in its own right and will not be required to stage the event on behalf of another member." This section has more significance from Ukraine than the overarching theme here. I think the Ukrainian broadcaster, Ukrainian fans, and everyone else knows that Eurovision isn't coming to Ukraine until the Russian invasion is defeated. What it means, though, is that regardless if Israel or Ukraine or someone else who can't host wins the contests, we wouldn't see hosts or interval acts from that country when we actually saw the next contest. Simultaneously, it was reported in a Swedish newspaper, Aftonbladet, and also confirmed to ESC Insights that actions are being taken to clamp down on illegitimate voting campaigns and mobilizations, as well as diaspora voting in general. Two key actions are being considered by the organisers at the moment. First is moving all of the voting onto Eurovision's central esc.vote online platform. Second is forcing viewers to vote for more than one song. The number being bandied around at the moment is a minimum of 3. The stated aim in both cases is to introduce this rule set in 2027. The EBU has made its rationale very clear in a letter that was sent to all members. The letter originally, I think, was in English, but Aftonbladet's reporting is in Swedish, so this is translated back again. The core meaning hasn't changed, but that is a disclaimer. This isn't an exact quoting, take it as a kind of paraphrasing, but we are very close to the original meaning. One passage really stands out. "Even without major paid campaigns and with a voting system that we can vouch for, it has become clear that today's geopolitical climate is driving votes for certain artists for reasons that have very little to do with their performances. This is nothing new in Eurovision history, we've seen it happen before, but this time it's persistent, and for many it's deeply concerning. While Europe's phone networks are disparate and decentralized, running on different systems, presumably making a uniform level of security across the board impossible, voting exclusively online clearly brings in additional security and screens out when non-organic voting campaigns are taking place, as has been the case with Israel. We can see that clearly by looking at the countries that utilize online voting already and their records from 2024 to 2026. The 3 I want to highlight here are Luxembourg, Australia, and the rest of the world. Luxembourg, Australia, and the rest of the world gave 12 points in the televote to Israel at every single opportunity in 2024 and 2025. That meant a straight run of 12s in the televote in the final. Then, after additional measures were taken after 2025 to strengthen the integrity of the voting, all of a sudden, things changed, and not just by a little bit. After clear, consistent patterns that you see with political and diaspora voting, you would expect a similar result every time. This year, instead of 12, 12, and 12, it was 1, 0, and 6. The result fell off a cliff in 1 year with no other circumstances changing. Enhanced security measures catch and filter out manipulation of the voting system way more efficiently than can be done with phone-based voting. And for that reason alone, it's absolutely imperative that the EBU moves the entire thing online. I've discussed at length on this channel before that I feel Eurovision is in a dangerous place. For years, I've been calling for the contest to recognize it's in a battle for its survival and to start acting like it. Now, for the first time, we're seeing at least some signs that that's what they're doing. While I and a great many others believe that Israel should be removed entirely, what we're seeing is a real and serious devaluation of their potential political and propaganda gain from Eurovision. Routes for them to cheat their way to a televote victory are being cut off. The prize of them winning then becomes more distant, and the reward for that, which would be hosting the contest in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, is lost entirely. It significantly changes the calculus for Israel in the event, and it has reduced their surrogates online to whinging on Twitter about how everyone is just so mean to them. Just to be clear, because I do think this is really funny, rules protecting the contest from vote manipulation without ever mentioning Israel were immediately picked up by pro-Israel accounts as an attack on Israel. I'd say that the people in question surely realize they're telling on themselves here, but I guess critical thinking probably isn't their strong point. Overall on this, I feel like I both need to give some credit where credit is due and also voice a lot more frustration. I'm still angry and disappointed that Israel has remained in the contest, and that anger is directed both towards the broadcasters who voted for it to be that way, and the EBU who've often frustrated me by laying out one set of principles that they supposedly live by, but in reality adhering to something completely different. I don't feel there's been honesty about the level of geopolitical realpolitik that is influencing it here, and it wouldn't hurt the EBU to just say that as it is. At the same time, these measures do represent a large portion of what is possible in the situation we're currently in, where complete removal is off the table. There will be no state-level cultural boycott of Israel in the foreseeable future. That ship has sailed. That is the only way in which Israel could ever be banned from Eurovision. That said, Eurovision is still an institution that can be protected, at least to an extent, from their negative influence. And these measures are a very good example of doing just that. That doesn't mean we're going to stop talking about Israel in Eurovision, and we're going to keep going with what my stated objective has been all along. It's so important to negate the PR benefit that they are able to take from the competition. These measures should hopefully make that a little easier. What I will say is super frustrating though, is that so many of us have been talking about this for years. And so while it's obviously great that things are changing now and that some actions are being taken, how I wish we could have pulled our heads out of the sand 2 years ago and done this after 2024, when those patterns were surely already there. Better late than never, but I am still feeling super exasperated. What remains to be seen is whether the 5 broadcasters and countries currently boycotting the contest will see this as sufficient to merit their return. As a reminder, those are Spain, the Netherlands, Slovenia, Ireland, and Iceland. They weren't in the contest in 2026, and as of yet, none of them have publicly indicated whether they're going to return or stay out for 2027. We should be hearing from the Netherlands soon, before the end of August. All the others, we just don't know. Intentionally or not, these announcements are a major overture to those 5 broadcasters currently sitting on the sidelines. They also provide them with 2 very important things. Firstly is genuine positive movement on the issue at hand that addresses some of the concerns that they raised. Secondly, and perhaps equally importantly, it provides political cover for these broadcasters to say, look, we've pressured them into changes, so now we feel able to return. It creates the space for them to maneuver in any direction they want. The original justification does still stand because Israel is still in the competition. For that reason, broadcasters can safely choose to stay out and not receive backlash for this. On the flip side, they can use the logic of the rule changes to return if they wish. It won't look embarrassing and it won't look like a climb down. We're going to be watching this closely over the next few weeks, and if we do see some returns, you can expect to see me talking about it in a video on this channel. There is one other element of the voting rules potentially being changed, and I mentioned it before. That's changing the system so you have to vote for at least 3 songs. The idea being that it further dilutes the power of a small number of voters casting the maximum allowable amount for a single entry by forcing them to also vote for someone else. While I'm curious enough about this idea that I'd be willing to see it run in the contest at least once, just to see how it works, I can't say it's something I'd be hugely enthusiastic about. We have a similar system at Junior Eurovision, and its primary effect has been to make the public vote kind of powerless. Everyone is spread across such a narrow range in most cases that the jury has the vast majority of the power in providing the winner. A completely justified response to this would be to say, well, we're keeping the 12, 10, 8, 7, 3 to 1 system of voting, unlike Junior Eurovision's public vote, which is totally proportional, so the effect won't be as big. But I still worry about songs which are seen as rank outsiders and are maybe not so strong, getting votes on the basis that people want to vote for a favourite and then don't want to support any of the other favourites, so they pick something that's really low down. These kinds of things don't change the winner, but they could change a qualifier. They could push someone from 11th to 10th and deny someone a final place based only on tactical voting, which would be sad. What this means is it could be a distortion that is a step too far. If the new security measures and having the votes all online are enough to control political manipulation and to control the diaspora effects, then I think that's probably as far as it needs to go. Like I said, I'm willing to be cautiously open-minded about this, because I'd rather have 1 year with a system that then makes us go, okay, maybe that isn't the best solution, than doing nothing at all. It shows that there are actual good faith attempts to try and address some of these issues, which we haven't necessarily seen before to this level. In the context of all of this, I do think we should say that the conversation has clearly dramatically shifted over the last 2 years. Like I say, I applaud the fact that these measures are being taken, but they're being taken in an environment where the organisers have been forced to respond to pressure. A lot of work has gone into shaping this conversation broken, and it's manifested itself in a number of ways. The fans who felt they had to step back from the contest entirely have played their part. Eurovision media has done their bit in shaping this conversation too, and I hope I've been part of that. Above all, the broadcasters who've been willing to leave the contest entirely have massively increased the urgency of this issue. This is far from a complete victory, but I think we should take a moment to be encouraged by how far we've come, and a moment to say that, in my opinion, this justifies what we've been doing here on this channel and justifies the pressure that many others have applied by walking away from the contest entirely. I've said all along that I think both approaches are legitimate, and I also think that both approaches are effective. The two together make each other stronger. This is only one of the rule developments this week, so I do want to talk at least briefly about the others. Firstly is that the minimum age has been risen from 16 to 18. This requirement had crept into some national finals in the past couple of years, so we kind of knew this one was coming, but now it is properly in place. This is one I basically completely support. Having anyone on site at the contest under the age of 18 adds a ton of extra layers of necessary safeguarding and security that significantly complicates an already complicated event. On a more basic ethical level, you're talking about literal children being thrust in front of hundreds of millions of people with no real idea of how they're going to respond to it. Sometimes it goes well and it's fine. Take Celia Capsis, for example, who didn't seem at all like a fish out of water and handled her Eurovision 2024 experience just fine. On the flip side, though, it can go very wrong. Christian Kostov has been very open about how, despite the fact he scored over 600 points and finished second, which was Bulgaria's best result at the time, the experience of Eurovision at the age of 17 was way too much for him mentally. It's just not fair to take such a big gamble on such a young person's mental health. It's just a singing competition at the end of the day. These pressures were explicitly cited as the reason for the decision, and I fully support it. Frankly, I'm surprised it took this long. Beyond that, we also got some details on clampdowns on pre-recorded backing vocals. This is a little less controversial than when we started the video, but I'm sure there are plenty among you who hate the fact that pre-recorded vocals are allowed at all. I am going to have to disappoint those people because they're not being banned again. However, the rules are being, as the EBU put it, clarified. They emphasize that the lead vocal must be the only element performing the main melody and they cannot replace or unduly assist the live vocal performance. This one is quite interesting to me because while not much has actually changed, this clarification has probably been prompted by the fact that, as my friend GJ Koyman reported this week, more than half of the entries at the contest this year had the first versions of their stems for the show rejected due to excessive use of backing vocals. This kind of sounds more like a warning than a concrete change, but it demonstrates that the contest isn't going to allow delegations to take too many liberties with this. They will merely allow some liberties, a reasonable and sensible amount of liberties. The proof for this will be in the enforcement next year, so let's see what happens. Another one from the last week is the departure of the 6-year main title sponsor, Moroccan Oil. The company themselves chose to end the partnership. They've been a controversial element of the contest for some time now, given that it's an Israeli company, but I feel like I need to reiterate here, just as I did in my conspiracy debunking video from some weeks ago. Moroccan Oil have never had any meaningful influence over the contest and its decision-making processes. And the reasons why Israel remains in the contest are entirely geopolitical. It has never had anything to do with Moroccan Oil. For that reason, when people ask me what effect this departure is going to have, none whatsoever, except for whoever at the EBU is responsible for finding a new main sponsor. They have a lot of work to do. All of this together means it's been one of the most consequential weeks for the contest in quite some time. Hopefully, the combined effect of these changes will be a materially different and materially better contest than what we've had in the last few years. From my perspective, my approach is not going to change. I'm going to keep celebrating the things that deserve to be celebrated and keep being clear-eyed about the challenges that are facing Eurovision today. Hopefully, we can continue to make a positive difference here on this channel. That's where we are going to wrap up things for today. For now, thank you as always for watching, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's to come in the next few weeks. Make sure to check the description for my socials and also for our merch that we launched earlier this year and we're very proud of. For today, take care and I'll see you again very soon.